The morning sun had not yet broken over the mountains when Chief Petty Officer Marcus Chen loaded his rifle into the helicopter. He had done this hundreds of times before. The weight of the weapon felt familiar in his hands. Comfortable even, like shaking hands with an old friend. Around him, 7 other Navy SEALs prepared their gear. They moved with the quiet efficiency of men who had trained together for years. No wasted movements. No unnecessary words. Each man knew his job. Marcus was the sniper. At 34 years old, he had spent 12 years in the teams. This was his 5th deployment to Afghanistan. He had seen more combat than most men twice his age. His hands were steady, his eyes were sharp, and his reputation was solid. Next to him, Petty Officer Jake Rodriguez checked the spotting scope. Jake was 26 and had been Marcus's spotter for 2 years. They worked together like parts of the same machine. Jake would find the targets and calculate the distances. Marcus would make the shots. Simple as that. "You ready for this one?" Jake asked, his voice barely audible over the helicopter's engines warming up. Marcus nodded. He was always ready. That was the job. Lieutenant Commander Brooks walked toward the group. He was the team leader. Tall, broad-shouldered, with a face that looked like it had been carved from stone. Brooks had led this team through dozens of operations. He was tough but fair. The men trusted him with their lives. "Listen up," Brooks said, his voice cutting through the noise. The SEALs gathered around him. "We've got a high-value target in a village about 40 miles northeast. Intelligence says he's a bomb maker. A good one. He's been building IEDs that have killed a lot of our guys, a lot of Afghan civilians too." Brooks pulled out a map and spread it on the ground. The men knelt around it. "The village is here." He pointed to a small dot in a valley surrounded by mountains. "Population is small, maybe 50 people total. Our target is supposedly hiding in this compound on the east side." Marcus studied the map carefully. The terrain looked rough. Steep mountains on all sides. Limited escape routes. The kind of place where things could go wrong fast if you weren't careful. "What's the plan?" asked Sergeant First Class DeMarco, the team's medic. "We insert here." Brooks tapped a spot about 2 miles from the village. 3 clicks out. "We'll patrol in on foot. Hit the village at dawn. Grab the target and get out before anyone knows we're there. Quick and clean." "Air support?" asked another SEAL. "We'll have a Predator drone overhead, and the quick reaction force will be on standby 15 minutes out. But the terrain is tricky. Radio communication might be spotty in those mountains, so we need to move fast and stay sharp." Marcus felt a small knot form in his stomach. He had learned to trust his instincts over the years. Something about this mission felt off. The terrain was too confined. The intelligence seemed too convenient. But he kept his concerns to himself. He was a sniper, not a strategist. Brooks knew what he was doing. "Any civilians we need to worry about?" Jake asked. "Intel says most of the village is friendly, or at least neutral. But you know how it is. Always be ready for anything. Rules of engagement are standard. Positive ID before you shoot. We're not here to start a war with the locals." Brooks looked each man in the eye. "Questions?" Silence. The SEALs knew their jobs, all right. "We load up in 10 minutes. Check your gear. Check it twice. This is a live mission, gentlemen. Let's bring everyone home." The men dispersed to make their final preparations. Marcus walked to a quiet corner of the staging area. He pulled out his phone and looked at a photo. His wife Sarah smiled back at him. Next to her was their daughter Emma, 7 years old with gap-toothed grin. He had promised Sarah this would be his last deployment. After this he was done. 12 years was enough. Emma needed her father home. Sarah needed her husband. And Marcus was tired. Tired of the sand and the heat. Tired of the violence. Tired of saying goodbye, just 6 more months. Then he could retire, get a normal job, coach Emma's soccer team, have dinner with his family every night, sleep in his own bed. The dream of that normal life kept him going, thinking about home. Jake appeared beside him. "Always," Marcus said, putting the phone away. "Your last tour, right?" "That's the plan." "Lucky bastard," Jake said with a grin. "Meanwhile, I'm stuck doing this for another 3 years minimum." "You love it," Marcus said. "Yeah, I do. But still, must be nice to have an end date." Marcus didn't respond. The truth was he felt guilty about leaving. These men were his brothers. Leaving them felt like abandonment. But he had to choose. And he chose his family. The helicopter blades began to spin faster. The whine of the engines grew louder. It was time. The 8 SEALs climbed into the Chinook helicopter. They strapped in and waited. Marcus felt the familiar pre-mission adrenaline start to pump through his veins. His senses sharpened. His focus narrowed. Everything else fell away except the mission. The helicopter lifted off the ground. Marcus watched through the window as the base grew smaller below them. Then there was nothing but darkness and the endless expanse of Afghan mountains. They flew low and fast. The pilots knew these mountains well. They navigated through valleys and around peaks with practiced ease. The SEALs sat in silence. Some closed their eyes. Others stared into space. Each man dealt with the pre-mission tension in his own way. Marcus cleaned his rifle. He had already cleaned it twice that day. But the repetitive motion calmed his nerves. Load the magazine. Check the scope. Verify the safety. He could do it blindfolded. Had done it blindfolded during training. His rifle was a .300 Winchester Magnum. It could reach out and touch targets at over 1,000 meters. He had made shots at distances that would seem impossible to most people. The rifle was an extension of his body now. When he looked through that scope, he became something else. Something focused and calm and deadly. 30 minutes into the flight, the crew chief gave them a signal. 5 minutes to the landing zone. The SEALs checked their gear one final time. Night vision goggles were secured. Radios were tested. Weapons were locked and loaded. Everyone was ready. Marcus could see the ground rising up to meet them. The helicopter flared and touched down in a small clearing. Before the wheels fully settled, the SEALs were out and moving. They spread out in a defensive perimeter while the helicopter lifted off. Then there was silence. The helicopter disappeared into the darkness. The team was alone in the mountains. Brooks gave a hand signal. Time to move. The SEALs formed up in a tactical column. Marcus took his position near the rear. As the sniper, he would provide overwatch once they got closer to the target. But for now, he was just another gun in the patrol. They moved through the darkness like ghosts. The terrain was rough. Loose rocks threatened to turn ankles. Thorny bushes grabbed at their uniforms. The altitude made breathing harder. But they pushed on. Marcus's mind was already calculating. The village was 3 kilometers away. At their current pace, they would arrive just before dawn. Perfect timing. The darkness would give them cover for the approach. The light would give them visibility for the assault. Above them, stars filled the sky. It was beautiful in a harsh way. This country had a stark beauty that Marcus had come to appreciate. The mountains were ancient and unforgiving. They had seen empires come and go. Alexander the Great had fought in these valleys. So had the British, the Soviets, and now the Americans. Everyone thought they could tame these mountains. Everyone was wrong. The patrol continued. An hour passed. Then another. The sky began to lighten in the east. Dawn was coming. Brooks raised his fist. The patrol stopped. They were close now. Maybe a kilometer from the village. Time to slow down and move carefully. Marcus could feel his heart rate steady. This was the moment before. The calm before the action. He breathed deeply and let his training take over. Whatever was coming, he was ready for it. The sun climbed slowly over the mountain peaks. The darkness gave way to gray, then to pale orange light. The world came into focus around them. Marcus and the team moved carefully down the rocky slope. Every step was calculated. One loose stone could start a small avalanche. One snapped branch could alert the enemy. They moved in silence, communicating only with hand signals. The air was cold at this altitude. Marcus could see his breath. But underneath his uniform, he was sweating from the exertion. The terrain was unforgiving. Steep angles, loose gravel, exposed sections where there was no cover. They reached a ridge overlooking the valley. Brooks signaled for the team to take cover and observe. The SEALs dropped low behind rocks and bushes. Marcus pulled out his spotting scope and looked down at the village below. It was small. Maybe 20 buildings made of mud, brick, and stone. They were clustered together in the traditional Afghan style. Flat roofs where families would sleep during hot summer nights. Narrow alleys between buildings. A small stream ran through the eastern side. Jake lay next to Marcus, also scanning the village through binoculars. "See the compound?" Jake whispered. Northeast corner. Marcus shifted his scope. There it was. A larger compound with walls around it. The target building. Intel said their bomb maker was inside. A man responsible for killing dozens of coalition soldiers and countless civilians. "I see it," Marcus confirmed. But something bothered him. His eyes swept across the village again. Movement caught his attention. Men. More men than there should be in a village this size. You seeing this? Marcus asked Jake quietly. Yeah, lots of military-age males. Way more than the intel suggested. Marcus counted. 10 men visible. No, 12. No, 15. And those were just the ones he could see. In a village of 50 people total, that was too many. Way too many. He focused on them more carefully. The way they moved. The way they carried themselves. These weren't farmers. These were fighters. He had seen enough of them over the years to know the difference. We've got a problem, Marcus said to Brooks. Brooks crawled over. What is it? Count the fighting-age males in that village. Intel said this was a small, mostly peaceful village. That's not what I'm seeing. Brooks took the binoculars and looked for himself. His jaw tightened. Marcus watched his commander's face carefully. Brooks was thinking, calculating, weighing options. Could be a meeting, Brooks said. Tribal gathering or something? Could be, Marcus agreed. But he didn't believe it. His gut told him something else was happening. Brooks keyed his radio. Overwatch, this is ground team. We're at the observation point. Village appears to have significantly more military-age males than Intel suggested. Request updated assessment. Static crackled in their earpieces. Then a voice responded. Ground team Overwatch. Predator is experiencing technical difficulties. No visual at this time. Recommend you assess and advise, Brooks frowned. The drone was their eye in the sky. Without it, they were operating blind. Overwatch, what's the ETA on drone visual? Unknown at this time. Working on it. Marcus exchanged a glance with Jake. This was getting worse. No drone support. Too many potential hostiles. And they were deep in enemy territory with limited backup options. Brooks gathered the team leaders. All right, here's the situation. We've got more unknowns than I like. But our target is in that compound. He's not going to wait around forever. We can abort or we can adapt and push forward. What's quick reaction force status? Asked DeMarco. QRF is on standby. 15 minutes out if we need them. But you all know these mountains play hell with radio signals. We might not get a clean call out if things go south. The team was silent. Each man was thinking through the risks. This was the job. It was never safe. Never guaranteed. They had trained for situations just like this. But training and reality were different things. I say we push forward, said Chief Watson, the breacher. We came here to do a job. Let's do it. Others nodded in agreement. These men didn't back down from danger. It was part of who they were. Part of what made them SEALs. Brooks looked at Marcus. Sniper, what's your call? Marcus hesitated. Every instinct told him to abort. To pull back and wait for better intel. Better conditions. But he also knew that chances like this didn't come often. If they left now, the target might disappear. More Americans might die from his bombs. I don't like it, Marcus said honestly. But I'm in if you are, Brooks nodded. All right. We're going in. But we're going to be smart about it. Chen, you and Rodriguez take the high ground here. Set up Overwatch. You'll have eyes on the whole village. If this goes sideways, we need you providing cover fire. Roger that, Marcus said. Everyone else, we move in 2 elements. Watson, you take Team 1 and approach from the west. I'll take Team 2 from the south. We converge on the target compound. Fast and quiet. Get in, grab the target, get out. Questions? No one spoke. Let's do this. Move out. The assault teams began their approach down the mountain. Marcus and Jake stayed behind on the ridge. They found a good position behind a large boulder. It gave them cover and a clear view of the entire valley below. Marcus set up his rifle on its bipod. He adjusted the scope, checked the wind, calculated distances. From this position, he was about 800 meters from the target compound. Well within his effective range, Jake set up the spotting scope next to him. They worked in sync like they had done countless times before. Jake would identify targets and call out ranges. Marcus would make the shots if needed. Team 1 is moving into position, Jake said, watching through the scope. Marcus could see them too. 6 SEALs moving like shadows through the village outskirts. They used the buildings for cover, moved during moments when local attention was elsewhere. Professional, smooth. Team 2 is flanking south. Jake continued his commentary. Brooks and his element were harder to see. They had better cover on that approach. Good. The less visible they were, the better. Marcus scanned the village through his rifle scope. He moved from sector to sector, window to window, rooftop to rooftop, looking for threats, looking for anything unusual. Then he saw them, men. moving with purpose. They carried AK-47 rifles, not slung over shoulders like farmers might carry them for protection, but at the ready, like soldiers preparing for battle. "Jake, you seeing this?" Marcus asked, his voice tense. "Yeah. I count 25 armed men, and they're positioning themselves." Marcus's heart rate increased. This wasn't random. This was organized. The men were taking up positions around the village perimeter, covering approaches, setting up fields of fire. "This is a trap," Marcus said. The realization hit him like a physical blow. "Ground team, this is Overwatch," Jake said urgently into the radio. "You need to abort." "I repeat, abort mission. The village is fortified. Multiple armed hostiles taking up defensive positions." Brooks's voice came back immediately. "Overwatch, confirm." "How many hostiles?" "At least 25, probably more." "They're organizing. This is an ambush." There was a pause. Marcus could imagine Brooks weighing his options. They were already committed. Both teams were halfway to the target. Pulling back now would expose them in open ground. "Copy that, Overwatch. We're pulling back to Rally Point Alpha. Cover us." Marcus watched through his scope as the SEAL teams tried to withdraw, but it was too late. He saw an Afghan fighter point toward Team 1's position. Then he raised his weapon. "They're compromised," Marcus said. "Contact imminent." The first shots rang out across the valley. AK-47 fire, distinctive and deadly. The crack of bullets echoed off the mountain walls. Team 1 returned fire. Muzzle flashes lit up the dawn. Marcus could see the SEALs diving for cover behind a low stone wall. Then Team 2 came under fire. More muzzle flashes. More gunfire. The village erupted into chaos. "We're taking fire from multiple positions," Brooks's voice came over the radio, strained but controlled. "We're pinned down. Need suppressing fire on targets north of our position." Jake called out coordinates. "Target 300 meters, rooftop, 2 shooters." Marcus found them in his scope. 2 men with AK-47s firing down at the SEAL position. He controlled his breathing. Squeezed the trigger. The rifle kicked against his shoulder. Downrange, one of the shooters dropped. The other dove for cover. Hit. 1 down, Jake confirmed. But for every target they eliminated, 2 more seemed to appear. The village was crawling with fighters. 40 at least, maybe 50. The SEALs were outnumbered 5-1. "This is bad," Jake said. "This is really bad." Marcus kept shooting, methodical. Calm. Target. Breathe. Squeeze. Next target. He was good at his job, but even he couldn't shoot fast enough. Down in the valley, he could see his teammates fighting for their lives. They were professionals, the best trained soldiers in the world, but they were trapped in a kill zone with limited ammunition and no air support. Marcus heard Brooks's voice on the radio, shouting now over the gunfire. "QRF! QRF, we need immediate extraction." "Grid coordinates." Static cut off the transmission. "Radio's not getting through," Jake said, trying to boost the signal. "Mountains are blocking it." Marcus felt cold dread settle in his stomach. His brothers were dying down there, and there was nothing he could do except keep shooting and hope reinforcements arrived in time. The battle raged on, and Marcus Chen knew with absolute certainty that they were all in serious trouble. The gunfire was constant now, a roar of violence that filled the valley. Marcus worked his rifle with mechanical precision. Find target, shoot, find next target, shoot, but it wasn't enough. There were too many enemy fighters. Through his scope, he watched his team struggle. Team 1 was pinned behind a low stone wall. Bullets chipped away at their cover. Dust and rock fragments filled the air around them. They returned fire when they could, but they were trapped. Team 2 had taken cover in a dried-up irrigation ditch. Better protection, but still surrounded. Brooks was with them. Marcus could see his commander's distinctive profile as he directed fire and tried to coordinate an escape. "Targets on the rooftop, 2 o'clock, Jake called out. Marcus shifted his aim. 3 fighters with RPGs, rocket-propelled grenades. If they fired those, his teammates would be blown apart, he fired. The first RPG gunner dropped. The second one ducked. The third raised his launcher. Marcus fired again. The bullet found its mark just as the fighter pulled the trigger. The RPG launched wild, spiraling up into the sky before exploding harmlessly against the mountain. "Good shot," Jake said, but there was no celebration. Just grim focus. "QRF, this is ground team, how copy?" Brooks's voice crackled over the radio, desperate now. Only static answered. The mountains were blocking their transmission. The quick reaction force had no idea they were in trouble. Help wasn't coming. Marcus heard another voice on the radio. DeMarco, the medic. We've got wounded. Peterson took one in the shoulder. Martinez in the leg. I need time to work on them. Negative, Brooks replied. No time, we need to move now. But they couldn't move. Every time someone tried to reposition, bullets tore through the air around them. The enemy had them completely surrounded. Marcus could see fighters moving through the village, taking up better positions. They were organized, disciplined. This wasn't some random group of insurgents. This was a well-trained force. He realized with sickening clarity what had happened. The intelligence had been false. Deliberately false. Someone had fed them bad information, led them into a trap. This whole mission was designed to kill them. Jake, we need to thin them out, Marcus said. Target the leaders, the ones giving orders. Jake scanned the village carefully. I see one. Southeast corner, near the old truck. He's directing fire. Marcus found him. An older man with a gray beard. He wore a Pakol hat and carried himself with authority. Definitely a commander. Marcus centered the crosshairs. 800 meters. Wind from the east at about 5 miles per hour. Slight upward angle. He made the microscopic adjustments in his aim. Held his breath. Squeezed. The commander dropped. Immediately, the fighters near him became disorganized. They looked around in confusion. Good. Another one. North side, near the mosque, Jake said. Marcus found him and fired. Another hit. More confusion among the enemy ranks, but it wasn't enough. For every leader he took down, the enemy adapted. They were learning to stay out of sight, to use better cover, and they were still advancing on his trapped teammates. Down in the valley, Chief Watson made a run for it. He broke from cover, trying to reach a better position. Bullets kicked up dirt at his feet. He dove and rolled behind a pile of rubble, then he screamed. Watson's hit, someone shouted over the radio. He's down. DeMarco crawled toward Watson under heavy fire. Marcus provided covering fire, shooting at anything that moved. Jake called out targets rapid fire. They worked together like a machine, but it still wasn't enough. Overwatch, we're running low on ammo, Brooks said. His voice was still steady, but Marcus could hear the edge in it. The realization that they might not make it out. Marcus checked his own ammunition. He had maybe 20 rounds left. Then he'd be down to his sidearm. Not much use at 800 meters. We need to get them out of there, Marcus said to Jake. How? We're 2 guys with 1 rifle. They're facing 40-plus hostiles. Marcus knew Jake was right, but he couldn't accept it. These were his brothers down there. His friends. He had known some of them for years. Had trained with them. Shared meals with them. Trusted them with his life. He thought of Sarah and Emma, his promise to come home. His dream of a normal life. Then he pushed those thoughts away. Right now his family was down in that valley, fighting, bleeding, dying, and he was the only thing between them and complete annihilation. A new voice came over the radio. Lieutenant Commander Brooks, calm, measured. The voice of a leader who knew he was beaten but refused to quit. All teams, listen up. We're going to bound back by fire teams. Team 1, you move first. Team 2 will provide covering fire. On my mark. Sir, Peterson can't move, someone replied. He's bleeding bad. Then we carry him. No one gets left behind. You hear me? No one. Marcus felt a surge of emotion, pride, fear, determination. This was what made them SEALs. They never left a man behind, ever. 3, 2, 1, mark. Team 1 broke from cover. 4 men running with Peterson supported between 2 of them. Team 2 laid down suppressing fire. Marcus and Jake added their fire from above. The enemy responded with a wall of bullets. The air seemed to vibrate with the volume of fire. Marcus saw one of the SEALs stumble, then get up and keep running. They made it to a better position behind a thick mud wall. Team 2, your turn, Brooks ordered. Now it was the other team's turn to run. But they had farther to go, more open ground to cover, and the enemy knew what was coming. As soon as Brooks's team broke cover, the insurgents concentrated their fire. It was overwhelming, terrifying. Marcus had never seen anything like it. Martinez went down. Shot in the same leg that was already wounded. He fell hard. Brooks grabbed him, dragging him toward cover. Another SEAL, Johnson, provided covering fire while moving backward. Then Marcus saw it. A fighter with an RPG. He was in a window taking aim at Brooks and Martinez. In 2 seconds, they would both be dead. Marcus swung his rifle. Too fast, his first shot missed. The fighter settled the RPG on his shoulder. Marcus forced himself to slow down. Breathe. Aim properly. The fighter's finger was on the trigger. Marcus fired. The bullet struck the fighter in the head. The RPG fell from his hands and clattered to the ground inside the building. RPG neutralized, Jake said. But there are more. I count at least 5 more. The SEALs made it to cover, but barely. Martinez was screaming in pain. DeMarco worked on him frantically, trying to stop the bleeding. We're not going to make it, someone said over the radio. Marcus didn't catch who, but he felt the despair in those words. The acceptance of defeat. Shut up, Brooks snapped. We're getting out of here. All of us, but everyone could hear the lie in his voice. They were surrounded. Low on ammunition. With 3 wounded men, and no help coming, Marcus looked at his rifle. At the village below, at his trapped teammates, his mind raced, searching for a solution. There had to be something, some way out. That's when he saw the cave system. Old irrigation tunnels in the mountainside behind Team 1's position. If they could reach those tunnels, they might have a chance. The tunnels would provide cover and a potential escape route. Brooks, this is Chen. I see a possible exfil route. Old tunnels at your 11 o'clock, maybe 50 meters from Team 1's position. There was a pause. Marcus imagined Brooks looking, assessing. I see them, but that's a lot of open ground. It's the only chance. Another pause. Then Brooks's voice, resigned but determined. Roger, we're going to try it. On my mark, everyone makes a run for those tunnels. Chen, we need you to keep their heads down. Copy that. Marcus looked at his remaining ammunition. 15 rounds. 15 rounds to cover 8 men across 50 meters of open ground, while 40-plus enemy fighters tried to kill them. The math didn't work. It was impossible. But impossible was all they had left. He looked at Jake. His young spotter's face was pale but set with determination. This is it, Marcus said. Everything we've got. Every shot has to count, Jake nodded. Let's bring them home. Brooks's voice came over the radio one more time. We're fucked, he said simply. It wasn't despair. It was just acknowledgement of reality. But we're going down fighting. 3, 2, 1, break. The SEALs ran, all 8 of them carrying their wounded brothers, sprinting toward the tunnels. And Marcus Chen began to shoot. Time seemed to slow down. Marcus watched his teammates run through his scope. 8 men, some wounded, some helping the wounded, all of them moving toward the tunnels that might save their lives. The enemy opened fire. Bullets tore through the air. Dirt exploded in fountains where rounds struck the ground. It was chaos. Pure chaos. Marcus fired. A fighter on a rooftop dropped. He worked the bolt, acquired the next target, fired again. Another hit. His movements were automatic, smooth. Every shot had to count. He had no ammunition to waste. Target left on the wall. Jake called out calmly. He was scared, Marcus could tell, but his voice remained steady. Professional. Marcus shifted. Found the target, an insurgent aiming an RPG at the running SEALs. Marcus fired. The fighter fell backward. The RPG unfired. 12 rounds left. Down in the valley, the SEALs were halfway to the tunnels. Brooks was in front, laying down covering fire. Watson hobbled along despite his wound, supporting Peterson. DeMarco and Martinez were close behind. The others provided security, firing as they moved. But the enemy was adapting. More fighters appeared. They were flanking, trying to cut off the escape route. If they reached the tunnel entrance first, the SEALs would be trapped in the open. Targets moving to block the tunnels, Jake warned. 405 fighters. Northeast approach, Marcus found them. 5 men running hard toward the tunnel entrance. They would get there before his teammates. The mission would fail. His brothers would die. He had to stop them. All of them. With 5 bullets. His heart pounded. His hands were steady, but his mind was racing. 5 targets. 5 bullets. At this range. With them moving, it should be impossible. But Marcus had spent 12 years becoming the best sniper in the teams. He had trained for impossible shots, had practiced until his muscle memory was perfect, until he could shoot in his sleep. He pushed away all doubt, all fear, everything that wasn't the shot. The world narrowed to just him, his rifle, and the targets. The first fighter was in the lead. Marcus tracked him, led him by just a fraction, accounted for the movement, the distance, the wind. He squeezed the trigger. The bullet flew. 800 meters in less than 2 seconds. The fighter dropped mid-stride. Marcus worked the bolt smooth, fast, found the second target. The man had seen his companion fall but kept running. Brave or stupid, didn't matter. Marcus fired. Another hit, 3 targets left, 3 bullets. The remaining fighters slowed down. They were scared now, confused. Their friends were dropping and they didn't know where the shots were coming from, but they were still moving toward the tunnels. Marcus fired again. The third fighter fell, 2 rounds left, 2 targets still moving. Your team is almost there, Jake said, watching the SEALs approach the tunnels. 30 seconds, but 30 seconds was too long. The 2 remaining fighters would reach the tunnels first. They would set up in the entrance. Kill the SEALs as they arrived. Marcus aimed at the 4th fighter, fired, hit. The man tumbled forward into the dirt. 1 round left. 1 target, and that target had just reached the tunnel entrance. He was taking up a firing position, aiming at the approaching SEALs. Marcus centered the crosshairs on the man's chest. But something was wrong. He had a hostage, a woman, an Afghan woman in traditional dress. He was using her as a shield. Marcus could only see parts of him. A shoulder, part of his head. Shoot, Jake urged. They're almost there. But Marcus hesitated. The shot was nearly impossible. If he missed by even an inch, he would hit the woman. Kill an innocent civilian. Everything he stood against. Chen, take the shot. Brooks's voice crackled over the radio. He had seen the situation too. Marcus's finger rested on the trigger. The woman was crying. Terrified. The fighter was shouting something. Threatening her. Using her. The SEALs were 20 meters away now. 15. The fighter would start shooting any second. Brooks, Watson, DeMarco, all of them would die. Marcus thought about his training, about impossible shots he had made, about trust in his skill, about what it meant to be a SEAL. He thought about Emma, about Sarah, about the promise he had made to come home. Then he stopped thinking. He let his training take over, let his body do what it had been trained to do. He found the tiny sliver of the fighter's head visible behind the woman, maybe 3 inches of exposure, at 800 meters, with a slight wind, and his target moving slightly, the impossible shot. He exhaled slowly. His heartbeat slowed. The world went quiet. The chaos faded away. There was only the shot. Between heartbeats, in that perfect moment of stillness, Marcus squeezed the trigger. The rifle kicked. The bullet flew. Marcus didn't breathe. Didn't move. Just watched through the scope. The fighter's head snapped back. He fell. The woman stumbled forward unharmed and ran. Hit, Jake whispered. Jesus Christ. That was incredible. But Marcus wasn't thinking about the shot. He was watching his teammates reach the tunnels. They piled into the entrance, safe for now. They made it, Jake said. Relief flooded his voice. Marcus allowed himself 1 breath, 1 moment of relief. Then he was back to work, because the enemy wasn't done. They were regrouping, preparing another assault. Magazine empty, Marcus said. He ejected the empty mag and reached for his last one. 10 rounds. That was all he had left. He loaded it and scanned the village. The fighting had dropped off. The insurgents were falling back, confused by the heavy losses, scared of the invisible sniper picking them off. But Marcus could see their leaders organizing them, pointing toward the tunnels, preparing to dig the SEALs out. Then he saw him, the man in charge, the one coordinating everything. He stood on a rooftop, gesturing to his fighters, giving orders. He wore a black turban and had a distinctive scar on his face. Even at this distance, Marcus could see he radiated authority. This was the commander, the man responsible for the ambush, for the trap that had nearly killed his brothers. Jake, you see him? The one on the center rooftop. Yeah, that's their leader. Has to be. Marcus studied him through the scope. 800 meters. Maybe 820. The wind had picked up slightly. Gusting now, not steady. A difficult shot, but not impossible. If Marcus could take out the commander, the enemy might break. Lose cohesion. Give his teammates time to escape through the tunnels. But the commander was smart. He kept moving, never staying still for more than a second or two, making himself a difficult target. Marcus waited, patient still, like he had been trained. A sniper's greatest weapon wasn't his rifle, it was his patience. The commander stopped. Just for a moment. He was looking toward the tunnels, planning his next move. Marcus had maybe 2 seconds. He made his calculations instantly. Distance, wind, angle. His breathing slowed. His heart rate dropped. Everything else disappeared. The commander raised his hand, about to give an order to his men, about to send them charging toward the tunnels. Toward Marcus's brothers, Marcus fired. The bullet crossed the valley. 823 meters. 2.3 seconds of flight time. The longest seconds of Marcus's life. Through the scope, Marcus watched the commander's head snap back. His body dropped like a puppet with cut strings. He fell off the rooftop and disappeared from view. For a moment, nothing happened. The insurgent fighters stared at where their commander had been. Shocked, confused. Then panic spread through their ranks like wildfire. The organized force fell apart. Fighters began falling back. Some started running. The coordinated attack dissolved into chaos. "They're breaking," Jake said, amazement in his voice. "They're actually running." Marcus kept his rifle up, scanning for any remaining threats. But Jake was right. Without their commander, the insurgents were fleeing. Some were helping wounded comrades. Others were just running for their lives. The valley began to quiet. The gunfire slowed, then stopped. After the chaos and noise, the silence was almost painful. "Ground team, this is Overwatch," Jake said into the radio. "Enemy forces retreating. I repeat, they're retreating." "Copy that, Overwatch," Brooks replied. His voice sounded tired. "Worn out, but alive. Good shooting up there." "Damn good shooting," Marcus didn't respond. He was watching the village, making sure the threat was really over. His body was shaking slightly now. Adrenaline crash. He had been running on pure focus and training for so long. Now that it was over, the exhaustion hit him. "We need to get QRF in here," Brooks continued. "We've got 3 wounded, and we're completely out of ammo." Jake adjusted the radio, trying different frequencies. QRF, this is Overwatch. How copy? Static." Then a voice. "Overwatch, this is QRF. We read you. What's your status?" Relief flooded through Marcus. The mountains had shifted. The signal was getting through. Help was coming. "QRF, we have 8 personnel at grid coordinates." Jake read off the numbers. "We are combat ineffective. 3 wounded. Request immediate extraction." "Copy that, Overwatch. Birds are in the air. ETA 12 minutes, 12 minutes. They had to hold for 12 more minutes. Marcus scanned the valley again. Most of the insurgents had fled, but some remained, hiding, waiting. Maybe planning one last attack. Marcus kept his rifle ready. He had 8 rounds left, enough to cover his team until the helicopters arrived. "Marcus," Jake said quietly. "That shot, the one that killed their commander, how far was that?" 823 meters. "In this wind? With him moving?" Jake shook his head. "I've been your spotter for 2 years. I've seen you make incredible shots. But that one? That was impossible." The sound of helicopter rotors grew louder. Marcus could see them in the distance. 2 Chinooks escorted by Apache gunships, the most beautiful sight he had ever seen. "QRF inbound," Jake said, tracking them through the spotting scope. Down in the tunnels, Brooks and the team emerged. They moved carefully, weapons ready, still expecting an attack. But the village remained quiet. The insurgents had fled. For now, Marcus kept his rifle trained on the village. He scanned windows, rooftops, doorways, any place where an enemy might be hiding. His finger rested lightly on the trigger. 7 rounds left. He would use every one if he had to. The helicopters came in fast and low. The Apaches circled overhead, their chain guns ready to shred anything that moved. The Chinooks flared and landed in the valley near the tunnels. Dust and debris flew everywhere. The ramps dropped. Medics rushed out. They ran toward the SEALs. Marcus watched through his scope as they started working on Peterson, Martinez, and Watson, loading them onto stretchers, moving them toward the helicopters. "Time to go," Jake said, already packing up the spotting scope. Marcus took one last look at the village, at the bodies of enemy fighters scattered around, at the building where the commander had fallen, at the place where 8 Navy SEALs had nearly died. He had killed at least 15 men today, maybe more. Each one had been a threat to his brothers. Each one had been trying to kill American soldiers. But they were still human beings, still people with families, with lives. Marcus had learned long ago not to think too much about that. It was the job. The enemy made their choice. He made his. That was all there was to it. But sometimes in the quiet moments he thought about it anyway. "Marcus, we need to move," Jake said urgently. The helicopters wouldn't wait long. Marcus broke down his rifle quickly, collapsed the bipod, stored it in his pack. He and Jake started down the mountain, moving fast but carefully. The terrain was treacherous. A twisted ankle now would be stupid after surviving a firefight. They reached the valley floor and ran toward the helicopters. The rotor wash hit them like a physical force. Dust stung their eyes. The noise was deafening. Brooks saw them coming. He waved them aboard. Marcus and Jake climbed into the Chinook. Inside, the wounded were already strapped in. Medics worked on them. IV bags hung from hooks. Blood was everywhere. Peterson was unconscious. Martinez was gritting his teeth against the pain. Watson was alert but pale. They were all alive. That was what mattered. "Everyone's aboard," Brooks shouted to the crew chief. The ramp started to close. The helicopter lifted off. Marcus felt the familiar sensation of his stomach dropping as they climbed rapidly. The valley fell away beneath them. The village became smaller. Just another anonymous cluster of buildings in the mountains. Inside the helicopter, no one spoke. They were too exhausted, too shell-shocked. They just sat in silence, watching the medics work, listening to the roar of the engines. Marcus closed his eyes. The adrenaline was wearing off now. He felt every bruise, every scrape. Every muscle ached from the tension of the last few hours. He was 34 years old and felt like 90. Jake sat next to him. The young spotter's hands were shaking. Post-combat reaction. Marcus had seen it before. Had experienced it himself. It would pass. "You did good today," Marcus said quietly. Jake looked at him. His eyes were red. Whether from dust or emotion, Marcus couldn't tell. "I thought we were going to die," Jake said. "I really thought this was it." "I know. But we didn't. We made it. Because of you." "That shot, the commander. I've never seen anything like it." Marcus shook his head. "It wasn't just me. Everyone did their job. Brooks kept the team together. The guys fought hard. You called out targets perfectly. It was all of us, but they both knew the truth. Without that shot, the insurgents would have regrouped, would have stormed the tunnels. The SEALs would have died there out of ammunition in the darkness. The flight back to base took 40 minutes. No one slept despite the exhaustion. They were too wired, too aware of how close they had come to disaster. When they finally landed, ambulances were waiting. Peterson, Martinez, and Watson were rushed to the field hospital. The others were debriefed by intelligence officers. What happened? How many enemy? Where exactly? The questions went on and on. Marcus answered mechanically. His mind was elsewhere. He was thinking about Sarah, about Emma, about how he almost didn't make it home. Finally, after 2 hours of debriefing, they were released. Marcus walked back to his quarters in a daze. Other soldiers stopped him, congratulated him. Word had spread fast about the ambush, about the shots that saved the team. He didn't want to talk about it. Didn't want to be congratulated. He just wanted to be alone. In his small room, he sat on his bunk, pulled out his phone. It was the middle of the night back home, but he didn't care. He needed to hear Sarah's voice. The phone rang. Once, twice, then she answered, groggy with sleep. "Marcus? What's wrong? Are you okay?" Just hearing her voice made something break inside him. All the fear he had pushed down during the mission came flooding back. The knowledge of how close he had come to never hearing her voice again. "I'm okay," he managed to say. "I just needed to hear you." Something happened. It wasn't a question. Sarah always knew. "Yeah, bad mission. But I'm fine." Everyone made it out. There was silence on the other end. Sarah was processing, imagining, worrying. "I love you," she said finally. "So much. Please be careful. I love you too. Kiss Emma for me. I will. Come home safe, Marcus, please. I will. I promise." He hung up, sat in silence, thought about the promise he had just made, about whether he could keep it, about whether it was fair to make promises he might not be able to keep. 3 days later, Marcus was called to Lieutenant Commander Brooks's office. Brooks looked tired, older somehow. The mission had taken something from him too. "Chen, sit down," Brooks said. Marcus sat. He had a feeling he knew what this was about. "I'm recommending you for the Silver Star," Brooks said without preamble. "Your actions during the ambush saved 8 lives. Those shots you made, particularly the one that took out their commander, were extraordinary, the kind of shooting that gets written about in history books." Marcus didn't respond. The Silver Star was one of the highest awards for valor. It would look good on his record, make his family proud, but all he could think about was the cost. The dead insurgents, his wounded brothers, the fear in Sarah's voice. "Thank you, sir," he said finally. "You deserve it," Brooks said. Then he paused. "I also heard this is your last deployment." "Yes, sir." 12 years is enough, Brooks nodded. "I understand. You've given more than most, done more than anyone could ask. You've earned your peace." Marcus stood to leave, but Brooks stopped him. "One more thing. The intel on that mission, it was bad. Deliberately bad. Someone set us up. We're investigating, but I wanted you to know. What happened wasn't your fault. Wasn't anyone's fault except whoever fed us that information." Marcus absorbed this. He had suspected as much. But hearing it confirmed made it worse somehow. They had been pawns in someone else's game. Nearly died because of someone's lies. "Thank you for telling me, sir." Marcus left the office, walked out into the Afghan sun. The heat hit him like a wall. Around him the base was busy. Soldiers going about their duties. Helicopters landing and taking off. The machinery of war grinding on. He thought about the next 6 months. About staying alive long enough to go home. About whether he could do this job knowing that the intelligence could be compromised. That any mission could be another trap. The doubt crept in. But he pushed it away. He was a SEAL. This was what he did. He would finish his tour, keep his promise to Sarah, go home. 6 months later, Marcus Chen stood in his dress uniform at a ceremony on base. His team was there. Brooks pinned the silver star to his chest. There were speeches, congratulations, photos, but Marcus barely heard any of it. He was thinking about tomorrow. Tomorrow he would board a plane, fly home, see Sarah and Emma, start his new life. That night the team threw him a party. They drank, told stories, laughed at old memories. But underneath the celebration was sadness. They were losing one of their own. The team would never be quite the same. Jake pulled Marcus aside near the end of the night. "I'm going to miss you," Jake said, a little drunk. "You taught me everything I know about being a spotter, about being a SEAL." "You're going to be great," Marcus said. "You've got the skills, the instincts. Just trust yourself. Will you stay in touch?" "Of course." "You're my brother. That doesn't change just because I'm leaving." They hugged. Two warriors who had faced death together and survived. The next morning, Marcus packed his bags, turned in his gear, said his final goodbyes. Then he walked to the airstrip where a C-17 waited to carry him away from Afghanistan forever. As the plane took off, he looked out the window at the mountains. The same mountains where he had nearly died, where he had made impossible shots, where he had saved his brothers. Part of him would always be here. Part of him would always be a SEAL. But another part, the bigger part, was ready to go home. 15 hours later, he walked through the airport in San Diego. Through the crowd, he saw them. Sarah crying and smiling at the same time. Emma jumping up and down with excitement. He ran to them, swept Emma up in his arms, kissed Sarah like he had been drowning and she was air. "Daddy, you're home," Emma said, hugging his neck so tight it almost hurt.